Welcome to Your Mac Life for Wednesday, the 13th day of July. Thank you guys very much for joining us here live on the show on Wednesday evening or on the archive, if that's how you so choose to participate in the show. My name is Shawn King. This is show number 1020. Thanks for joining us. On tonight's show, as always, we're going to talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple from The Loop at loopinsight.com about the news of the week. We're also going to be talking to a very interesting artist named Cheryl Tarrant. Or Tarrant. I'll have to figure out how to get her name, say her name correctly. Cheryl is the artist behind the app Distressed Effects. Their website is distressedtextures.com. Distressedtextures.com. Really interesting stuff. Yeah, they got some really interesting creative textures and effects that you can put on your apps. It's available on the App Store. Distressed Effects is the app if you want to go to the App Store and download, or right here on the yourmaclifeshow.com website. You can click on the link there, and it's one of our affiliate links, so we get a couple of pennies if you happen to buy the app. I think it's a 99-cent app. Go buy. It's great. We'll talk to her about her art and about the application. We're also going to be talking later on the show, much later, after the Starting Point Photography segment, with Christina Warren. Christina is the senior tech analyst over at Mashable. We're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about, she said on Twitter after we all heard the awful news of Robin Williams' death, that openly has been for quite some time now discussing her battle is the wrong word, but her depression. And she got me, not because she made me or forced me or anything else like that, but to, for the first time ever, admit to my own dealings with depression. It got me to think that maybe we should talk about this. This is something that, if the death of Robin Williams means anything, let's have it mean that we started talking about depression in an open, honest, and non-judgmental kind of way. Having said that, I want to talk a little bit about, I've got 3 Robin Williams stories. First one was here in Vancouver. I think it was 1993 or 94, whenever he was shooting the movie Jumanji. You may not know that the movie Jumanji was shot here in Vancouver. And me and my buddy Rich Hench were at Comdex in Vancouver. We get on the elevator of the Pan Pacific Hotel. We're going up to a hospitality suite somewhere. And this little, now I say little, I'm 6'3", Rich and 250. Rich is about 6'3" and 210. So we're both a couple of very big guys. And this little guy gets on the elevator. And we notice it's Robin Williams, the comedian. And we're like, oh my God. Now, because we're Canadians, we didn't say anything. He just sort of gave us a little nod, hi guys, and turned and faced in front of the elevator. And Rich and I are saying, like, it's Robin Williams. We're not saying anything, but we're like, the Pan Pacific Hotel has, at that time, this is 20, 30 years ago, so it was unusual to have the elevator talk to you. And the elevator would announce the floors. First floor, second floor. And after about the third floor, Robin Williams starts imitating the elevator in different voices. He was doing it as Richard Nixon and doing it as, different people, Jack Nicholson. And this was hilarious. And so as people kept coming on and getting off the elevator, they'd come on the elevator and again, Canadians, they'd see this superstar and they'd just turn and look forward. And he would keep making fun of the elevator. You could see people snickering and laughing. Well, it turns out we found out later that people probably thought that Rich and I were his bodyguards. So that's why no one said anything to him. Flash forward to Sly. Sly knows the date, but Sly, my friend Pam, and his lovely wife, my friend Steve and his lovely wife Pam, Macworld, New York. I found out that during Macworld in New York that July, Robin Williams was doing a taping of his for HBO, and it was the Live on Broadway show. If you go to our website, yourmaclifeshow.com, it's one of our Amazon picks is that DVD. And Sly, Steve, and Pam I think you guys got balcony seats, Sly, if correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure that's where you guys were up in the balcony. But because I've been such a huge Robin Williams fan my entire life, I had to spend the big bucks to sit as close as I possibly could to the stage. So I think I want to say row 5, row 6. I was very, very close. I was in with all the celebrities. I mean, Bryant Gumbel, the sportscaster, was on my left, and Paul Reiser, the comedian, was on my right. Christopher Reeve, Superman, was in his chair over on the side. And I was just like, I got better seats than Superman. This is cool. This is great. So he comes on stage and he does what, an hour, hour and a half of Robin Williams. It's all, you know what that is. And at one point, and Sly has, I've got the video for you folks in the IRC chat room. I'll post the video there for you. But it's Robin Williams Olympics, if you want to do a search for it on YouTube. And it's Robin Williams, he starts talking about, I think it was the Salt Lake City Olympics. And he says something about Canada. And I lost my mind. I've never done this before in my life. I literally went, "Yay, Canada!" And I'm screaming at Robin Williams. And he stops what he was doing and riffs on Canada for like a good 5 minutes. He just starts, he goes off on the Prime Minister. He goes off on Canada is the loft over a really cool apartment kind of stuff. It was hilarious. I've never yelled out like that before in my entire life. So third story, Mackerel Expo 2005, 2006, Robin Williams is on the show floor. And it turns out he'd come to Mackerel Expo on a regular basis. A lot of people did. We saw Herbie Hancock, the musician there. We saw Steven Tyler from Aerosmith there. Sinbad, the comedian, was a regular at Mackerel Expos. So I walk up to Mr. Williams and I introduce myself. I shake his hand. We start talking. And we stood there for probably about 30 minutes just talking, just riffing on computers and whatever it was. And I'm smart enough to know how to feed him lines. So I'm tossing him lines. And at one point, I reminded him of I'd seen the DVD by this time of the live on Broadway thing. And the funniest thing is, if you watch the beginning of the DVD, the camera follows him out from backstage and then turns and pans the audience. And it's the funniest thing in the world. You can see me. And what you see is across the screen, head, Shawn, head, because everyone else was normal height. And I was wearing this bright red shirt. And you can spot me on the DVD. My bald head standing among all these other people. And so I said to him, I got to apologize. I'm the guy who heckled you on Broadway. I yelled out, "Yay, Canada," and you went off in a Canada riff. And the funniest thing in the world, he starts to laugh. He goes, "You're an asshole." You don't heckle on Broadway, man. One of the greatest joys of my life was in that conversation. I don't remember what I said to Robin. I don't know what came out of it, but I said something that made him laugh. And it was that big ha 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 laugh of his, where he threw his head back, wide open mouth, great big, huge laugh of his. And I remember just feeling so good about myself at that moment in time, thinking, I made Robin Williams laugh. I mean, that's just like the greatest thing ever, that I could make a comedian of his stature, of his ability. I could make him laugh. That was pretty damn cool. So those are my 3 Robin Williams stories. And I spent a lot of the last couple of days watching old video of his and clips. And at some point I'll probably watch Good Will Hunting and some other movies of his. Not all of them were gems. Not all of them were great movies. But he did make a lot of good movies. And his acting was amazing, especially when he was lower key. Although we loved him as the maniac, sometimes he was better. Good Will Hunting is a perfect example of it, when he toned it down. What was the movie he played the really creepy guy? I think it was called 1 Hour Photo, and it was kind of a suspense horror movie. He was great in that. So it's a shame that we've lost someone who has given us so much in the past, and was undoubtedly going to give us more in the future. But and so our thoughts go out to his family, his kids and his wife, and everyone who knew him. And by the way, if you were one of the assholes that helped drive his daughter off of Twitter and Instagram, fuck you. Just, there's no other way to describe it. I'm sorry for being blunt, but you are the scum of the earth for you to say the things that you said to her on Twitter. In this moment of time, to say those kinds of things about someone who's had that kind of loss in that kind of way, I hope you die in a fire. I mean that literally, not as an internet meme. I really, really hope you die in a fire, because you don't deserve to live on this planet. You don't deserve to breathe the same air as the rest of us do. There's not words that describe what kind of one-celled scum you are. We'll talk to Jim Dalrymple from The Loop in a little bit. We're also going to talk to Cheryl Tarrant. I got to get her name right. Of Distressed Effects app. Go to the iTunes store, do a search for Distressed Effects, or go to the website distressedtextures.com and check out what she is doing. Really, really cool artist. I love the app first, and then when I went to do some looking at the app, I found that this lady Cheryl is the creator of the images behind the app, and just amazing, beautiful, beautiful work. Fine art photography. So we'll talk to her about her photography, talk to her about the app, and we're also going to be talking later on the show. And as I said earlier, we're going to arrange this a little differently than we normally do. For those folks who are tuned in to listen to Christina Warren, we're going to do that at the end of the show. So after we do the interview with Cheryl Tarrant around 6:15 p.m. Pacific time, at 6:45 p.m. Pacific time, 9:45 p.m. Eastern time, we're going to bring on Film Girl. We're going to stop the show right there, and those of you who don't want to talk about this stuff, and I understand if you don't, can gracefully bow out of the show there. But I want to talk to Christine about her, what she knows of depression. We'll talk. I don't know how much I'll talk about my battles with it over all these years. We'll talk about it for about half an hour. And basically, what we want to do is we want to talk about what it is, how you can recognize it in yourself and others, and what you can do about it for yourself and others. We'll talk about that and a bunch more. ArcSign says, I followed Shawn's Burt's Buzz affiliate link and rented it. I usually rent the 99-cent rental of the week when it's good. ArcSign, I don't see if you liked the movie or not. If you haven't seen it, there's this movie called Burt's. I didn't know Burt's Bees was an actual thing. I've always used Burt's Bees on my lips. I didn't know Burt was a real person. If you get a chance to watch the trailer, he seems like a really weird, eccentric, wonderfully kooky kind of guy. And so there's this documentary about him. So if you get a chance, check it out. Burt's Bees is the website. You can go to DOAMM.com and you can find a link to it there if you so choose. So again, later on the show, we'll talk to Cheryl Tarrant. We're going to talk to Christina Warren. But up next, we'll talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple from The Loop at loopinsight.com. This is your Mac Life. Welcome back, folks. This is Your Mac Life. I am Shawn King. And our phone, we've got our good friend Jim Dalrymple from The Loop at loopinsight.com. Jim, how you doing? Jim, how you doing? Yeah, there he is. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Why do mixing boards have to have all these buttons?
Well, usually there's somebody there that knows how to work it.
No shit. That helps a lot, doesn't it? Hey, you, I don't know if you saw the story about Manchester United, the football team, the soccer team for us North Americans, in the UK has banned iPads. I'm not going to know about that story, but I saw on Flickr that you had been to a Tom Petty concert last week, weren't you?
Yes.
Did you notice a lot of folks holding up devices to either record or take pictures, and was that distracting to you?
There was a ton of them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's everywhere.
But is it distracting?
Everywhere. Well, not unless the guy's standing right in front of you.
Yeah.
You know, and holding it up in your face. But most people are, you know, decent about it.
When you say decent,
no, not overall. I mean, you know.
When you say decent about it, do you mean that they just hold it up and take a picture and then they put it down, or what do you mean decent?
Well, no, some people have these big, goofy phablet things that they hold up.
Yeah.
And they hold it up right over their head, which is right in your eye.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I thought would be really distracting. Was not that they are in fact doing it themselves, but you have this bright light coming back towards you. You're looking at the stage, and suddenly there's this spotlight coming back up in your face.
Yeah. So that part is bad. With just a regular phone, no, you know, that's not so bad.
Okay.
I mean, you can't see by a lot of these devices that Samsung releases. Mm-hmm. Somebody holds it up, it like blots out the sun.
You posted up on the Loop earlier this week, remembering Les Paul. Why does Les Paul mean so much to you?
Les Paul. He's an innovator in guitar. I mean, he made the first electric solid body guitar. Mm-hmm. He invented multi-track recording. I mean, Les did so much for the music industry that, you can look at different people in industries to say, yeah, they really did something. And Les is one of those people. I mean, people think about him and think about the guitar, the Les Paul guitar. But it's more than that. You know, he did so much in the industry and in innovating electric guitars, inventing, in fact. I mean, his first electric guitar, he had a hollow body guitar. He put a railroad tie inside. You know, that's how, because he wanted to know how it would sound if it was solid, and you know, what would happen if I did this, and then multi-track recording, and what would happen if I did this, and you know, I mean, and besides all of that, he was a fabulous guitar player. Yeah, he was just a great guitar player, and he performed every Monday night at the Iridium in New York, right up until he died. Him and his band performed down there, and it was just amazing. And actually, I did your show on the first anniversary of his death.
Yeah, you did.
When they had that, and you know, they had some big hitters there. You know, to listen and play guitar. Jeff Beck did a show that night of Les songs, and you know, he's just a man that will always be remembered in the music industry and should be. It's like Steve Jobs in the tech industry. Yeah. I mean, he will always be remembered.
I think that's one of the reasons why he's so important, because of all the reasons you enumerate. It wasn't just because of one thing, but there were so many things that he did in his long, long life that affected so much of the industry, not just the guitar, but also all the things behind the scenes. And like you said, he was also a great guitar player himself.
Yeah, and you know, everything that Les did, we all benefit from as either musicians or music lovers. Yeah. You know, and he was doing this stuff back in the 50s. And he played up until the 2000s. You know, so that's a long time to be playing guitar and, you know, inventing things. And I was fortunate enough on one occasion to sit down with him and chat with him one-on-one, and it was just so great. So I have a lot of respect for the man, just like I post about, you know, the respect that I have for some technology people and some innovative people. It's the same for him.
Speaking of respect, Apple posted up on their apple.com site, remembering Robin Williams. We are deeply saddened by the passing of Robin Williams. He inspired us through his passion, his generosity, and the gift of laughter. He will be greatly missed. And then Apple did something that I thought was really cool. They honored him with not only the webpage, but a whole section of the iTunes store. But some folks took umbrage to this, the fact that Apple, in their point of view, was taking advantage of Williams' death by making more money off of his movies, by bundling them together so you could buy, Mrs. Doubtfire and that kind of stuff. What are your thoughts on this manner of honoring certain people?
some folks can kiss my ass. And I don't even know who said it. I know you've been talking about it. I don't know who they are, but yeah, whoever that is, you can. Look, are people going to go watch Robin Williams movies now more than what they did before? Sure.
Yeah.
Even I'm going to go watch a couple of Robin Williams movies.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to go watch them regardless of if Apple did a page or not.
Yeah.
They just made it easier for me to find. What am I going to do? Go to search, type in Robin Williams, all his movies are going to come up, and I'm going to click buy or rent.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Don't people that say that are just morons. I mean, it's the same thing when they said, oh, you shouldn't have Rosa Parks and you shouldn't have this. No, you just shut up. God, it's like people don't have anything else to complain about, so they see this and want to go off on it. So if they do, they're just being stupid, in my opinion. I mean, it's like nobody would ever find a Robin Williams movie to buy on iTunes unless Apple put this page up, this magical page that has links to everything. Otherwise, you'd never find it in the mess of movies in there. Because you can't search.
Exactly. God forbid you hit the search button and hit Robin Williams. Oh, my God, you can't do that.
Wow. Yeah, terrible stuff. Maybe they should disable search.
That's right. The Apple announced on, I think it was Monday, Apple's first diversity report shows company to be mostly male and white. Now, that surprised nobody, because that's Silicon Valley in general and a lot of other parts of the tech industry. Is this something that Apple should be promoting is the wrong word, but give us your thoughts on, first of all, the report itself. I mean, it doesn't surprise anybody that Apple, is like a lot of other places, mostly male and white, but what should Apple do about this?
Well, tomorrow I will also be releasing a diversity report, and I am also mostly male and white.
Do you want to clear up that mostly male part? Because I think that's my scoop right there. Jim Dalrymple admits to being mostly male.
I think it's great that Apple did it. Other companies are doing it.
Yeah.
And good. It's good to take a look and see where you are. And I think that we all want diversity.
Yeah.
We not for the sake of diversity.
Exactly.
I think what Apple needs and what Google wants and what Microsoft wants and every other company out there wants are the smartest people they can possibly get. Now, if that means that they're white male, then okay, they're white male. If there's a white male in there that's a piece of deadwood and there's a Chinese female that's better, okay, boot him out and put her in. I don't care what their sexual orientation is, what their color, race, I just want smart people.
Yeah.
I want smart people. That's it. So if the diversity report shows, hiring practices that we're hiring dumb white people, that's a problem. But it doesn't appear over the years that Apple has released too many dumb pieces of software and hardware. So they must be doing something right.
John Kalon in the IRC chat room says, to force a mantra of diversity means that someone who's really good is going to end up decline for a position because some women are needed. Do you agree with that?
Oh, you can't. I don't think you can do that. If the last couple of picks for Apple's board were women simply because they were women, that's wrong. But if you look at the women that they chose, they seem to be very qualified.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
There's no doubt about that. So I have no issue with women being on the board, and they're very qualified instead of an old white guy.
Yeah.
I could care less. Just make smart decisions.
I think what John is saying is that if you have two equally qualified people, one a white male and the other somebody else, that forcing diversity means that you will hire the somebody else. And I don't have a problem with that Because after all these years of the reverse happening, where perhaps underqualified white males were being hired, yes, it's a reverse discrimination, but there's been so much discrimination before that. Maybe we have to reverse some of it for at least a short period of time in order to get a balance into the system.
I always think that there's some way to tell how a person is going to fit into your team.
Mm-hmm.
Is it going to be because, or that you hire this person for your team? So is it because they fit into the team better and there's going to be a greater working relationship amongst the team? And again, doesn't matter color and anything else. But I mean, to say, well, if the team is white, then obviously a white person is going to fit in more. I think that's crap.
Yeah.
But, or, same as if it's a Chinese guy, then, or a Chinese team and a white guy can't fit in there. I think that's crap too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You can fit. So, there's always differentiating factors in there. And it's just a matter of the hiring manager to figure out what one. The right one is not, well, he's white or he's Chinese or he's black or he's whatever. That can never be the right one. Or this guy's gay and the rest of them aren't, so that won't work because he'll be out after them all the time. No.
Yeah.
You can't do stuff like that. If it's a black Chinese gay guy and he's the one that is the smartest and fits the best, boom, you got yourself a job.
I think from my point of view, is that you hire the best person you possibly can. If you have two people that are equally qualified, you find the person that's the most diverse for your workforce. And sometimes that means that it might be in a group of Chinese people, it might be the white guy. In a group of males, it might be the female. You don't automatically include or disclude anyone because of any of those factors that don't matter to the job itself. That's the way I thought of it.
Yeah, well.
Do you recognize, I don't know if you've seen this story, the Meta Watch Premium smartwatch? Have you seen this thing?
No.
The Verge has a story about the Meta M1 can be had in a variety of colors and band options. Smartwatches are everywhere this year, but with few exceptions, the majority of them suffer from a lack of style or design sense. Meta Watch is looking to capitalize on this opportunity. Oh my God, this thing is ugly. This has got to be the ugliest smartwatch I've ever seen, Jim. This thing is just a giant clunky piece of cheap-looking plasticky metal with a poor quality LCD screen. Is the idea of a smartwatch dead? Has it been beaten to death by everybody else? And it's something that Apple should just stay away from, like it was toxic sludge.
Wow. Why don't you just,
I can't see.
Say what you mean.
I can't see Apple coming up with anything as smart as they all are, as smart as the design sense of Johnny Ive is, as smart as the marketing sense is of anyone in that company, to be bothered coming out with a smart watch that is anywhere near the Pebble or this ugly Meta watch or anything else. I don't see the point. I don't see people wanting to wear a watch in general. And in specifically, I don't see, I've talked to lots of people about this. The average everyday customer, the one that Apple seems to be wanting to go after all these years, is a little higher end, average everyday consumers. And average everyday consumers, in my opinion, don't want a smartwatch.
I can't disagree with you.
Have you talked to any average people who say that they're interested in a smartwatch?
I don't believe so. I mean, I've talked to some people that have a Pebble, and some people have this stuff, but it's nothing that's really appealing to me. I mean, I want the thing to be able to do stuff for me. And now that I've been walking a lot and stuff like that, I've been using the pedometer and stuff on my phone,
yep.
and I've been using that M7 chip, and the stuff that it can do. So I'm beginning to find that a lot more interesting than what I did before. So, I think that a device like this is going to appeal to different people for different reasons. Whereas a phone, it's a phone. People are going to phone, but it has some other features on it. This one is going to be different in the way that it appeals to people, I think. But I have to agree. I mean, Johnny and his team are not going to come out with some piece of crap.
I think the issue I have with it is that the only people I've seen using a Pebble or a smartwatch or anything else along these lines are geeks, are nerds, are techies, are people who are on the cutting edge of everything, but I haven't seen a single average person. And the more I look for it, the more I realize that average people just in general aren't wearing watches at all anymore. But even if they do, they're wearing their own particular brand and style of watch as a fashion statement for the most part. And I don't see any company coming anywhere near being able to replace a regular everyday wristwatch for the average person that has enough utility for them.
Well, yeah, and you have to look at who is wearing an actual wristwatch these days.
Yeah.
So you have the people that are going to wear a Rolex or one of the high-end models, as you said, as a fashion statement, or for the most part, older people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, older people are not going to buy a smartwatch.
Yeah, that's right.
And the people that are wearing a Rolex are not going to trade that in for a smartwatch.
Mm-hmm.
So you're looking at the tech crowd, the people that are listening to this show.
Yeah.
And, so then it has to appeal to them.
Speaking of appealing to them, in an oddly worded headline, The Verge says Microsoft reignites the Mac versus PC conflict for new Surface Pro 3 ads. Have you seen these ads?
They're going about it all wrong again.
Well, now, why do you say that?
Well, because that battle is over.
Yeah.
And, there's no resurrecting that battle, no matter how much you want to bring it up. It's done. Apple did the PC Mac thing years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And as funny as they were, and as much as everybody loved them, even Apple knew they were done.
Yeah, yeah.
But no, here, same as the iPod and the Zune, Microsoft comes rolling in, years later. Oh, here's a good idea for a commercial. Oh, God.
I can see.
You just feel like going over and patting them on the head.
I mean, I can see why Microsoft is doing this. This is, we've heard it for years that you always go after the guys who are number one. And as Jay Earl said to me via Twitter, this is Microsoft admitting that, at least in this regard, Apple is number one, which is a very interesting admission from Microsoft's point of view. And so you go after the guy ahead of you. You go after number one. Someone said that Pepsi is always attacking Coke, and Coke never attacks Pepsi. I don't know if that's true, but that's the way it goes. Avis attacks Hertz. Hertz never attacks Avis. So once Apple got to that place where they were the leader, they dropped the Mac versus PC ads. And Microsoft, now they're no longer the leader in this particular space. They picked up that mantle and want to reignite the Mac versus PC. And you know what? In some ways, the ads are very clever in that they show some things that are correct. I can't touchscreen my MacBook Air. I don't want to, but that's not the point. I can't draw on it with a pencil, with a stylus. I can't turn it into a tablet. Those are correct points. And they might be able to convince some customers that the Surface Pro 3 is the device for them. I don't think that these are bad ads.
Who are they going to convince?
People who don't know any better. People who the average person who wants to get rid of his
Windows. That just bump their head and are in a coma?
People who want to get rid of their Windows PC, average people who want to get rid of their Windows PC, and they see one of these ads and they'll think, yeah, I want a tablet, but I also need a laptop too. They think. They don't know because they haven't used one of these things before. Those are the people
who hold on. Yeah. What most people these days want to get rid of is Windows 8, not the Windows PC. So they're going to look at this and say, hey, that's the same thing I just want to get rid of here. I don't want that.
Yeah.
And they're right. They're right. Microsoft took the thought of a one operating system across the board, and it didn't work.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Apple took the one core and put it across the board. And that worked because then they made an interface for each device that works, that there are some common elements, that there's some familiarity.
Mm-hmm.
It's not exactly the same, though. So Apple's is clearly working. They spent years building the infrastructure. Microsoft did none of that.
Yep.
So Microsoft, to substitute, is just saying, well, just use your regular desktop apps. They'll work just fine.
Yep.
No, they don't. So I don't know. I don't know what they can do. I really don't, because they just seem to digging themselves in deeper.
Yeah. ArcSign in the IRC chat room says, Shawn, I'm glad hand models have worked, but it's a creepy ad. Microsoft Surface, perfect for all the disembodied arms of the world. That's the thing that bugs me most about the ad, is that there's just these four hands that are in there instead of actually real people. That just seems weird to me. I don't know why they did it that way. That to me is the only thing that really bugs me about the ad. I think the ads are complete crap. Make no mistake about it. These are bad ads. But if you are a person who doesn't know better, doesn't know about all the advantages of a MacBook Air, and doesn't realize that obviously Microsoft is pimping the best parts of the Surface Pro from their opinion, these could be ads compelling enough to at least get you to come into the store, into a Best Buy, into a Future Shop, into a Microsoft store, and ask about the Surface Pro.
Well, I suppose that may be one thing. Asking isn't bad. Nobody's buying, though.
That's right, exactly. We posted up on the Loop on Monday Jean-Louis Gassay's latest Monday note, an open letter to Tim Cook. Now, as soon as I saw that, I thought, oh, God, no, don't write open letters to Tim Cook or to Apple or to anybody. Open letters just are a stupid, pompous way of getting attention. And Jean-Louis Gassay is as guilty of this as anybody else is. Do you agree with him, though, that the Apple Store needs more curation, or do you believe what I believe, which is the way it's set up now, the Apple Store is pretty much irredeemable?
Oh, boy, oh, boy.
I mean, I can't remember the last time I went to the Apple Store and just searched for productivity apps or photography apps. I find out about apps on the iStore either through websites or through email. Someone says, hey, this is a really cool app, or those kinds of things. I certainly don't go to the iTunes store and do a search for photography apps.
No.
I don't think that...
No,
I don't
that would be silly. You'd come up with like 1,000 pages.
Exactly. I don't think it's possible to curate effectively the iTunes store anymore. I think it's gotten to be too big for Apple to do much with.
Well, I've been looking a little bit at that, and looking at it from the music perspective and what Beats does.
Yes.
Because Beats doesn't have radio. So Beats has basically curated lists.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
That's what Beats has. So does that work for them? Yes. I think it does work for them.
Yeah. So
if Beats can do it with 20 million songs, why can't Apple do it with its apps?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
You know, I think I think it can be done if the curation is really done well.
Yeah.
Not just top 10 apps, but if you look at how Beats does music curation, they do like some silly things, but good things like hair metal for your mother. You know, and no, seriously. And if you look at the songs, they're songs that have been on the radio.
Yeah.
So we would know the bands as hair metal bands,
mm-hmm.
but they were hit songs on the radio. So yes, in fact, your mother would know these songs because no matter what radio station she listened to, she probably heard them.
Yeah.
So, you know, you could put on a music list. Now, these are like 15 songs or 20 songs, and that's a curated list of songs that's very specific.
Yeah.
But they do it. You know, so that to me, you know, and all of the stuff that I've been talking about recently with looking at these music services, that's actually one thing that did come up
mm-hmm.
that I thought was interesting. So I am, the more I look at some of these music playlists and things that I do myself with music, the more I think that app curation in one form or another could work.
Yeah. I think one of the problems I have with the Apple Store is that because I don't trust their lists anymore. I don't trust their editor's choices. I've seen a lot of their editor's choices that were actually absolute crap apps that, you know, I would download and I would buy and think, why the hell did you think this was a good game? It's either buggy or it wasn't reviewed very well by other people. And it got me to thinking, okay, maybe the editor's choices are being paid to be in there. Maybe they're not actually editor's choices. They're the marketing team's choices.
I don't think that Apple needs the, you know, couple bucks that it would cost to do that. So I don't think that's happening. But, you know, these are somebody's choices. And, you know, again, if I go back to Beats, there's a girl on Beats that does all the metal curation. Yeah. And her name, I believe, is Susie Cole. So whenever I see a list and I see Susie's name, I know I like it.
Yeah. Well, remember,
I know I'm going to like that list.
Apple used to have this New Music Tuesday thing on the iTunes Store. It was a little podcast, and I don't remember what her name was, but she was doing the exact same kind of thing. She would play like 30, 40 seconds of a new song, and once you got to know her and knew what her tastes were and liked her taste, I'd start buying stuff just because she mentioned the name, because I trusted her to do that kind of stuff. So I think curation can work. I think it's just going to be very, very hard for Apple to do it in a way that's, for lack of a better term, fair to the thousands and thousands and thousands of developers and literally billions of apps they have out there now. That's the problem. I think the problem is it's gotten so big across so many different ranges of products, different from music, that it's going to be real hard for Apple to do it.
Well, then you need curators.
Yeah. That's right.
You can't have one curator.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, you know, for Susie, she has maybe she does metal. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Oh, just hold on a sec. There's a cop. Just a sec.
There's a cop? What are you doing? You're worried about a cop? Are you in St. Louis? Why is he suddenly worried about cops? What the hell?
What? No, hold on. You know what? I was using my phone, not the in-ear or not the car audio, because I wanted it to sound good for you. And then all of a sudden I look and the cops have the streets blocked off. So.
Are you driving?
Yes.
Dude, get off the phone. Jesus. I didn't realize you were driving. My God, man. Did you do an Amplified this morning?
Yes.
Okay, fine, folks. Go to the iTunes Store. Do a search for Amplified. You'll find it 5by5.tv. Jim and some other guy do another show. Get off the phone. Goodbye. I'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Jeez. I can't believe the guy was on the phone. Don't do that. Don't drive and talk to me. It makes me feel guilty, because what if happened if there had been an accident and I'd have heard the accident in my headphones? That would have scarred me for life. Don't do that. Folks, later on the show, I'm going to be talking to Christina Warren of Mashable. She's the senior tech analyst for Mashable, but we're going to be talking about depression, how to recognize it in yourself and others, what it is, and what to do about it for yourself and others. But up next, we're going to talk to Cheryl Tarrant, I got to get her name right, about Distressed Effects app. This is Your Mac Life. Welcome back, folks. This is Your Mac Life. I am Shawn King. On the phone now with Cheryl Tarrant. I figured out her
Hey,
name.
Shawn.
Hey, Cheryl, how are you?
Yep, got it. I'm doing good. How are you?
I am good. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, I read in your bio, folks, you can go to the website. Cheryl's website for her fine art photography is distressedtextures.net / Cheryl Tarrant, Tarrant. Give us a little sense of your background. You're a good old California girl living in Tennessee, aren't you?
Born and raised in Orange County, and ended up out here about 7 years ago. And I wouldn't go back. I'll tell you that.
Really? Where in Tennessee do you live?
East Tennessee, right outside of Knoxville.
Okay, I used to live in Nashville.
Okay, all right. We're about 3 hours away then.
Where outside of Knoxville? I used to drive there on my motorcycle going to the Dragon on a regular basis.
In Powell.
Okay, I know the area.
About 20 minutes from downtown.
Yep, beautiful area. Beautiful area.
It's gorgeous. I love it.
What brought you to the Tennessee area?
Long story, but family.
Okay.
Family. And just I don't know, it was over California. I was ready for a change.
Over California.
I'm being honest. I was ready.
Help me out here. I am a fairly new, for lack of a better term, professional photographer. What is fine art photography? What is your definition of fine art photography?
I think it's, well, versus the phone, it's just more of a higher resolution. Somebody who's more willing to print their art out and hang it up in a gallery. Although, as we know, a lot of people are doing that with their iPhone art now. But
sure.
When I started, it wasn't as big. And it just kind of led into the app. But it's definitely gallery quality, people that are in shows. That's my definition of it anyways. Higher resolution.
Is this something you've always done, or is this something that
No,
you're new to?
you know, I could give you the whole I got my first camera when I was 14 story, which I did. But I'm actually really not that good of a photographer, but I feel like I'm pretty good at editing. And that's one of the beauties of textures is you can take a really average photo and make it look like art. And I think that's what the draw is for people that really aren't technically sound in their photography skills. I think this is where they excel, is with the textures. And of course, there's purists out there that actually cannot stand textures, and, but I love them. I love that, the look of where you can take just a plain picture and make it look like it should be hanging on a gallery wall.
I think that's what immediately attracted me to your stuff. I read about Distressed Effects, folks. The app is called Distressed Effects. You can do a search for it on the iTunes Store, or you can go to our website at yourmaclifeshow.com, and right there we've got a link to it there. So I saw the app, and then what I always do is I check out the app and I check out the developer's website, and there was a link to your fine art, and I was literally blown away by the beauty of some of your stuff. And I thought they were paintings. I mean, they're so gorgeous. They look like...
That's the draw, is trying to make it look like a painting. That was the whole idea behind the app itself, was to take, to be able to be sitting in the doctor's office and bring up a picture you may have shot driving in your car and be able to make it look like a piece of art. That was the whole intent of the app.
And the other thing that attracted me to want to talk to you is you seem to have the same affinity that I do for barns. What is that all about?
Yep.
What is that all about?
Well, if we want to go dig psychologically, I think it has to do with my grandpa was a rancher in California. He lived out in the hills of Trabuco Canyon. He had orange groves, walnut trees, cattle. He would slaughter his own cattle, and it was just fantastic memories of riding around in his tractor. And he had a barn, and my sister and I would go in there and look for birds' nests. And that kind of leads into my infinity for birds. And I just have always been drawn to old barns, and not just old barns, but old houses that have been abandoned. I've been known to break into some houses, and not break in, but sneak in. And but I just like things that have been, I guess, I don't know, maybe discarded. I don't know if that's the right way of putting it, but
for me, it's interesting. Barns are interesting. I don't know why. I've been a city kid my entire life. I only lived on a farm briefly in high school for 4 years. But to me, a barn represents life. The idea that there's cows in there, and there's chickens in there, and there's pigs and cute animals and hay and all the other and swallows and all kinds of things. There's so much life inside of a barn. They've always fascinated me.
I think it also goes into I'm a firm believer in buying local as far as our food,
Hmm.
knowing where it comes from. That's a big part of it for me. I really believe in the farmers. I think that we need to go back a little bit with how we eat,
Hmm.
and it kind of ties into that. And just going back to simple times, I think we're far too ahead of ourselves right now.
Yeah.
And I just like the idea of, an old standing barn represents a lot simpler times for us. I think, that's the draw for me anyways.
Do you see the distressed effect in the image before you take your shot, or is it after you take the shot that you start
No,
passing it?
it's definitely after.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of just, sitting down and playing just like everybody else. That's the beauty of the app, is
Hmm.
that because I started doing the images, I know what I want in the app, and I'm kind of spoiled in that way, is that I can design textures that I want to use,
Hmm.
because I use the app every day. And yeah, I feel like I'm spoiled because I can pretty much design the textures based on my art. And I've also have a really loyal following of people that were following me on Flickr
Hmm.
that have went into the app. So that's a really good part of it. But no, I definitely come up with the idea after I see the image.
Do you the image that you take? So these are all photographs, folks. If you're watching on the video, I'm showing her Flickr gallery. Jewel of Distressed is the Flickr site. Do a search for Cheryl Tarrant, and you'll come up with it. The images that you see, they're all the same sort of, not same. Same is definitely the wrong word, but the very similar style. Does
Mhm.
distressed effects really only work with these kinds of landscape kind of images?
No, no, and I thought we first in the beginning, believe it or not, there's two reasons this app started. One, I was using another app and they had one texture that I loved, and they discontinued the texture, and I was bummed. And I had a friend approach me and he said, "I'm going to be making Apple apps. If you know anybody that wants one, let me know." And I
Yeah.
said, "Me, I do." And that's kind of how it all steamrolled. And I don't think we ever thought, it would go where it's at right now,
Yeah.
which is, we're absolutely grateful and we love it. We're having fun with it. But
Good.
what was your question? Oh, I'm sorry.
The idea that the app requires you to
Oh,
use
oh, landscape.
landscape
Okay.
shots. Yeah.
Right. Okay. I thought we
Focus,
were,
Cheryl.
I
Focus.
know, I know. I thought we were going to be boxing ourselves in.
Yeah.
But the beauty of it is I go to the hashtag distressed FX every day, and I see photos, of obviously selfies, people using it for selfies,
Mm,
and beautiful art that's not limited to landscapes.
yeah.
And I love it because, I was concerned that we would be looked at as just a landscape app. And
Sure.
granted, yeah, it works best for that, but you don't have to go there. You can do still life and portraits and all that good stuff. So, yeah.
You said earlier that you develop these textures. How do you do that? How do you go about that?
I For me personally, I know there's some people that paint them digitally. I start off with painting um, with actual acrylics,
Oh,
and
really?
then I'll bring it into photo. Hmm?
So I didn't realize that you're actually
What'd you say?
so I didn't realize you're actually painting
Yeah,
on canvas.
on canvas, and then I'll photograph it, and then I will tweak it in Photoshop,
Interesting.
and then yeah, and so I'll come up with the textures, and then I give them to my partner Steve, and he makes, uses his numbers and makes it into art for me. So yeah.
Uses his numbers. So I guess
Yeah,
you're not the.
whatever. I'm not a programmer. I'm the one. Yeah, I'm the art end of it. So
uh,
I could not do this without Steve.
Again, the app is Distressed Effects. It's available on the iTunes store. It's only 99 cents US, so definitely
Only, I know,
oh, it,
less than a thing of fries. Okay,
dirt cheap, folks, and
we put yeah,
it's
we put it on
so
sale, but free, so you can look for it free
it's
too.
so much fun and easy to use.
Yep.
I love I've always liked the idea of these kinds of apps that are one button push. You import your photo and then you just start clicking on
Mhm.
the images below to get these. You don't have to be an artist. You don't have to be a pro. You don't have to
Nope.
be anything along those lines. But if you do want to tweak these, you've also allowed the ability to have some sliders there that people can do more of an effect or less of an effect. I like that. It's not just boom, filter, boom, filter. It's filter, soften,
You
harden.
know, one of the dilemmas for us is we do get a lot of requests for people, for us to add more to it, which of course, we are going to add more, but we also want to keep it simple.
Mm.
Because I'm telling you right now, for me personally, because I use other apps, I use other art programs, and if I go in and I can't figure it out right away, it's deleted. So for us, we want to keep the user level simple, but also, obviously we want to expand it a little bit too. So there's a fine line for us there. But
My friend Lesh in the IRC chat room says we frequently use distressed textures in designing wallpaper. For those folks who don't understand that, and I'm certainly one of them, what's a distressed texture?
it's grunge. It's
Okay.
basically just another word for grunge, giving it that old painterly look, scratched up effect, making it look retro.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just, I don't know. I guess the best way to describe it would be grunge or making it look vintage.
The effects that you come up with, as you say, I didn't realize that you're painting these off in acrylics, and then you say you scan them into Photoshop, and then your partner turns them into the actual effects.
Yeah, I come up with the idea and then um, I send it to him and he does his magic and then he'll send it back and I'll tweak with it a little bit and give it either a go or a no, or we'll play with it a little bit and then it goes in the app. So
how do you know when you've got a texture just right? How do you know that
you
it's
don't.
you don't?
But I will say what's interesting was I was telling you about the app that I was playing with when I first started on Instagram, and there was that one texture, and I was so bummed when they deleted it. And I swore when I did the app I wasn't going to delete any textures in case people were attached to it.
Yeah.
That didn't happen. Just to move forward, you have to a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's really hit or miss. And one of the options I'm hoping that we get that we're talking about right now is the ability to change the layer settings a little bit, which you'll be able to change the hue of the texture, the
Mm.
saturation, the way it's overlaid. So we definitely have more stuff down the road for it.
I'm going through your distressedtextures.net
Mhm.
folder of landscapes, and are you coming up with the ideas for some of these titles? I love some places that still know God, not too many birds, the babies they came early. It's very poetic the way you are titling your images.
Um, yeah, I mean, I'm definitely coming up with the titles.
Yeah,
There's a lot of symbolism in my art.
yeah.
The birds are very symbolic. A lot of people don't know this, but if you look at my art, just about all of them have a bird somewhere.
Yeah, at
And
least
they're
one, right?
very well thought out. How many are in the picture? They represent people and things to me. A lot of the titles may represent something I'm going through at a certain time in life. I definitely use those images as a mental sounding board,
Yeah.
so to speak. It's thought out. It's not just throwing it down there.
I,
There's a reason why the title is what it is.
I don't know if you are that familiar to remember some of your older stuff, but as I was going through it doing research, my favorite one is Find Your Happy Place. It's a spectacular image. Are these images all taken in the Knoxville area, or do you travel around taking the images?
I have been down every single back road within probably an hour. So I will venture out, and of course, if I'm traveling, if we go to Kentucky or something, take some images.
Yep.
But for the most part, they are all in Knoxville.
Mm-hmm.
We're very, very blessed. Any corner I turn, there's usually a beautiful barn
Oh yeah,
or
yeah.
an old house.
It's a spectacularly beautiful area of the country.
It is. It really
I
is.
love living in that area, and especially wanting to be and maybe being a photographer. I would ride the motorcycle and stop every 5 miles at the end of a dirt road and take a picture down the dirt road.
Oh yeah.
What are you using to capture your images? Are you an iPhone person, or are you using a DSLR? What kind of camera do you use?
Well, I have a Canon, but I have definitely been more geared towards my iPhone over
Mm-hmm.
the last couple of years. Definitely. I mean, I try just about in fact, all the pictures on my Instagram are from my iPhone, and
Mhm.
all the ones on Flickr, other than a couple of them, most of them are from my DSLR.
The reason
It's
why,
just it's just easy.
yeah,
Obviously, it's just easy.
the reason why I asked that was I wanted to make that clear to folks that you don't the art that you're seeing if you go to Cheryl's website on Flickr.com, her images, or the distressedtextures.com website. These images are mostly iPhone images, and they're beautiful. They're
Yeah.
spectacular, and you don't need a fancy camera
No, you don't.
or fancy software in order to create beautiful images. So keep that in mind, folks. That you don't need to learn Photoshop. You don't need to buy an expensive Canon.
You don't
You
need
can
to know f-stops.
exactly just take a pretty picture and then
Yeah.
run it through a very inexpensive app, 99-cent app like Distressed Effects, and you can create some beautiful artwork. Are these images then able to be printed out, Cheryl? Do you know? I mean, I guess the question is, what kind of output does Distressed Effects do? Do you know about?
Our resolution is not 100% right now, and
Okay.
that's one of probably our biggest complaints.
Yep.
And like I said, honestly, and this is I've always go for the truth. When we first started this, our heads were not even wrapped around that people would want to print these. It was okay, this is for Instagram, and we're good to go.
Mm,
So in order for us to get to high resolution right now, we have to literally Steve will have to reprogram the entire app,
yeah.
and it's going to take some funds. So right now we're in the process of trying to raise some funds to be able to get full resolution, and
Mm.
that's the straight up truth. I mean, we're new developers. Steve was, this was his first big project, and we're babies in this. So, that 99 cents means a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So,
Folks, definitely go to the website, distressedtextures.com. Definitely go to the iTunes store, do a search for Distressed Effects. The app, again, 99 cents with your iPhone apps. And the other thing I love about apps like this, Cheryl, is that these are the kind of apps that you can use on photos you've already taken while you're sitting in the doctor's office waiting for your appointment, while you're in the bank lineup, while you're stuck in traffic, not driving, but as your
right.
passenger stuck in traffic. You can just play around with these apps, sort of let your mind be free, and just tap on the textures that Cheryl has created. And I guarantee you that if you have an image that you think might work, you'll find some sort of texture with maybe minor tweaking that you'll be able to really be proud of and really be able to show off to folks. I've been playing around with it for the last few days since I first saw the app, and really like the kind of images that I can get out, these very soft, dreamy kind of things. And that's why I asked you if it worked for everything, because for me personally, I didn't find, although I have seen examples on your Flickr page, I didn't find it worked for me very well with people's faces, but for landscapes, I found it to
Hmm.
be spectacular. For cityscapes, I've got a couple of shots of, I live here in Vancouver, Canada, a couple of shots of the downtown waterfront. They look great in a cityscape. And I'm definitely going to be going out and looking for more
Oh, definitely.
landscape stuff to shoot and play around with Distressed Effects.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is it's not a portrait app, but it's definitely been used that way.
Mm.
And it's going to take a little bit more skill to use it. And you may have to combine it with other apps, which I'm a full believer in having, a stocked arsenal of apps. I mean, I believe in a lot of the other apps, and I try to support other developers. And I'll plug them on if I'm using another app, I'll be sure to, let everybody know.
Yep.
But it's definitely a landscape still life app.
Mm-hmm.
That's that's where our minds were with it.
You definitely do that. I remember I saw on one of your apps, I think on your Facebook page, that you said that you like Snapseed too, which is one of my favorite apps. I
Yeah,
love
I love Snapseed.
Snapseed.
I
On
usually finish everything out in
no.
Snapseed. Snapseed's a big one. I also use Superimpose a lot, Procreate.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, like I said, I'm a fan of all apps. I'll try them out, and I'll give credit where it's due.
Sure.
I Like I said earlier, though, if I go in and it's hard to figure out,
Yep.
I'm out.
That's right.
I just can't do it.
I'm with you.
Bye.
I'm completely with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is an iPhone. It's a simple to use device. Therefore, I want my apps to be simple to use. You can find complicated stuff. I don't want complicated. I want something I can import easily, and then you start tapping on a screen, and I can create pretty pictures. And Distressed Effects is definitely one of those apps.
Thank you.
Folks, go to the website at distressedtextures.net. You'll find some more fine art photography by our guest tonight, Cheryl Tarrant. Also, go to the iTunes Store, and do a search for Distressed Effects app. We've got folks in our IRC chat room, including ArcSign, says, I'll be buying this app. It looks interesting. Folks, for 99 cents, there's no excuse to not buy this app. We've been talking to Cheryl Tarrant of Distressed Effects. Cheryl, thank you very much for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And hey, good luck on your next segment. I'm going to stick in with it. It sounds like a good one.
I hope it is, and I hope I don't cry.
It will be fun.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Strong.
All right.
All right. Thanks so much, Shawn.
You have a good
Bye-bye.
night. Bye-bye. Again, 99 cents. No brainer, kids. Go to the website, distressedtextures.net, and just look at some of Cheryl's work. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I got in touch with Cheryl. Was I saw the app, and the app looked kind of cool, 99 cents. And for me, 99 cents for a photo app, that's why I've got 500 of them. Because I'll just click on them, okay, fine. If you write a good description, I'm a sucker for your app. And I've got probably half of those apps I don't use because they were good descriptions, but the apps were crap. But I'm playing around with the app and going, this is really neat. This is fun to use. I'm sitting on the couch. I'm just opening up apps and opening up images and going, yeah, okay, this is simple to use. So I went to the website and I wanted to find out more about the app and saw Cheryl's beautiful, beautiful images. And again, part of it is because I don't recognize the places themselves, but I recognize the feeling of her images, that area around Knoxville, eastern Tennessee, western North Carolina and South Carolina. I guess it's southern Kentucky. Beautiful. Oh my God, it's so, so pretty around there. And all these back roads. If you go to the area, do not go on the interstates. Get off the interstates. Go on the back roads. Go on little 2-lane highways. Hell, go down some dirt roads and see what's at the end of them. People are friendly. If you're going down some farmer's dirt road and it's a dead end, you sort of wave to them and go, sorry, lost, and turn around and go back. It's not that big a deal. No one's going to shoot you. It's not some bad movie. People in that area of the country are wonderfully friendly. And you'll see some of these beautiful, and like I said to Cheryl, I've got the same sort of affinity for old buildings and barns that she does. And I'd love to go back there, and now that I'm a better photographer, and shoot some of the scenes that I remember seeing when we were riding our motorcycles around there. So definitely check that out. Again, Distressed Textures. I keep saying that word wrong. DistressedTextures.net. The app is Distressed Effects. You can find it on the iTunes Store, or if you'd like, you can go to the yourmaclifeshow.com. Right there on our page, we have a link to it. And if you click on that link, we get a little kickback from Apple. We get a couple of pennies from you buying the app, but don't worry about it. It's 99 cents. Go buy the app. So that was our starting point photography segment of the show. Now, normally this is where the show ends. Normally this is where I say, thank you guys very much for joining me. I've been Shawn King. This has been Your Mac Life. See ya! Okay, see, that's where it normally would end. But we all know of the death of Robin Williams. Robin Williams, the comedian, passed away by his own hand. He committed suicide. There's no sugarcoating it. He killed himself. And I have been a gigantic fan of Robin Williams for decades. A long, long time. I've seen everything he's done, every TV show, every movie, every concert video. Huge, huge fan of him as a person, and also him as a comedian, him as an actor, everything. So it was devastating to hear the news on Monday. And as I'm thinking about it and talking about it and learning about it, Christina Warren from Mashable, she's the senior tech analyst for Mashable.com, posted something that I thought was just incredibly brave, talking about her battles, her fight with depression, and being very open and honest about it. And she gave me, and Christine and I, we've been colleagues, shall we say, for, I don't know, about 10 years. We're not friends or anything else. I don't know the name of her dog or anything else like that, but, we've chatted back and forth. I've seen her at Mackerel Expos, and, every now and then we tweet back and forth, so whatever. But somehow, it was the combination of Robin Williams' death and Christina's bravery that got me to tweet something and say something out loud I've never said in my life. I have fought depression in various kinds of ways for as long as I can remember. It's undiagnosed depression. I've never gone and been clinically tested and found, oh yeah, you're depressed. And it's not constant. It's not forever. It hasn't been every day of my life, but it's certainly something that I've had to deal with. And Christina's admission is the wrong word. I don't want to say admission. Christina's statement that she has been going through this for many, many years gave me the strength to say the same thing, if only because it's something we need to talk about. And make no mistake about it, if we'd had this conversation last Friday, Robin Williams would still be dead today. Okay, it wouldn't have saved him. We could have had a conversation about depression for the last 10 years. It still would have happened the way it happened. Events still would have occurred the way they occurred. But maybe talking about it will help someone else talk about it, to get help, to go see a professional, to talk to their friends about it. And the other thing is, maybe by us talking about it, Christina and I and the audience and I and you guys on Facebook or whatever it might be, will help you understand what it is if you don't suffer from it, will help you to recognize it if you do suffer from it, and what to do about it. So after this break, I'm going to get on the phone with Christina Warren of Mashable. This is your Mac Life. Welcome back, folks. This is Your Mac Life. I am Shawn King. On the phone now with Christina Warren of Mashable. She's the senior tech analyst for Mashable.com. Christina, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you, Shawn?
I am, you know what? Because you were on the phone with me, I am great. Thank you very much for doing this. And again, as I said, I have never said this to anyone out loud before my entire life, but and again, statement, admission is the wrong word, but your statement on Twitter this past week didn't surprise me, but it surprised me in the sense that you were willing to talk about it. And you've been talking about it for quite some time, haven't you?
I have. I suffer from major depression, and I diagnosed myself, I guess I was 9.5 years old, but I was formally diagnosed when I was 14. And, I've had to go through a lot of various, things with that. But I've been fairly open about it on social media, and I've written about it actually even on Mashable last year when Aaron Schwartz tragically took his life. I wrote probably the most personal post I've ever published under my byline at work, not on a blog or anything. No. Called, after Aaron Schwartz, the tech community has to talk about depression. And, shared, my own struggles and things like that with the hope that it would maybe help start a larger conversation.
Did it?
It did. I think that I got a lot of really positive feedback from the post, and there definitely was conversations about depression with Aaron Schwartz. What made that case a little bit, I think, difficult to focus as much maybe as it would have been ideal is that there were extraneous circumstances with his case that were unrelated to mental illness, associated with his trial, and that took, that story became the bigger focus. But I heard from a number of people, from tons of people actually, saying that the article helped them, and a number of people who even said that because of it, they, went and went to a doctor for the first time or admitted that they, were depressed.
Let's back up a little bit. And first of all, is there a definition that folks can grab onto of what depression is? It's not just, oh, I'm sad, is it?
No, it's not. I mean, I think that's an important thing to know is that there's a difference between being depressed and having depression,
Yeah.
and sometimes those differences are really small, right? So, you can have a situational depression, and oftentimes this is often even classified things like postpartum depression, where it might be based on an instance in your life, and it might have the exact same symptoms, and you might even need to be treated by medicine for what's happening. But if you actually have a diagnosis, if you have major depression or more generalized anxiety disorders, this can be the similar sorts of thing. Then it's something that can happen over and over again in your life, and it's not tied to anything happening, related to your life. Personal circumstances might exacerbate things, but some of the worst depressions I've been in my life have happened at moments when on the surface everything was going great. I have no reason to be upset, no reason to be sad, but because it's a chemical imbalance, that didn't change the fact that even though everything was going great in my personal life, work, school, everything's going fantastic, but I can't get out of bed. And that's, to me, that's kind of, I guess, kind of a definition of depression, is that it's not just feeling bad, because everybody is depressed, everybody has down moments, but it's when it goes beyond that where all you can think about is this, encompassing dread. And for me, when it gets really bad, when, you literally can't get out of bed, and that might go to the extreme for some people, but when, all you're thinking about is about how bad you feel. And I think, you mentioned one of the worst things about it is that when you're in what I like to call kind of the tunnel of depression, a lot of times it makes it really difficult for people to get help, because you don't even feel like you can, like, even that amount of energy seems to be too much. And even that amount of effort seems to be too much, because everything just seems to be coming down around you, and you feel isolated, you feel alone, you feel like no one understands you, you feel, kind of lost in your own thoughts. And there's just this, overwhelming feeling of sadness and despair. And for me, just, honestly, just an overwhelming sense of where, when I feel depressed, where I want to die. I mean, I hate to be that frank about it, but like that's kind of what it's like when you're in it.
Are you saying that the difference between being depressed and depression is simply chemicals? That's the only clinical differences between it? That depression, as we are talking about it here, is a chemical imbalance that can be not cured, but certainly managed with drugs and or other treatments?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay.
And so, there are people who sometimes medicine can still help if they have a situational, issue, situational depression. If something has happened in their life that is really, really trying, you might suffer, a really horrific tragedy, and it might make you depressed in a similar way. But that's like a one-off instance. It's not a continuing chronic thing. I guess the chronicness is what makes having major depression different than just, being depressed.
Yeah. How does someone recognize the difference in themselves? Is it because, would it be that you are feeling depressed when you shouldn't be, that everything in your life is good and yet you still feel down? I'm surprised that you said you self-diagnosed at the age of 9. It means you were a freaking brilliant 9-year-old. But
Well, no, I mean, what it was is it was TV ads, and there was TV ads saying, do you fit these descriptions, and you might be depressed, and I fit all of them. Now, I'm 9 years old at the time. Now, so if I'm 9 years old and I'm feeling all of these things, despair, despondent, there's no hope. If I'm like literally like going through the list on the on the TV commercial and being like, yep, that's me. Then that says that there's something. And we can even look back after, I've had more therapy and talk to more professionals and talk to my mom. There were things we could recognize when I was probably 6, that there were probably things that you could recognize that I was, suffering. But I was 14, and it was one of those things where, you're a teenager. It can be difficult to diagnose because everyone's going through hormonal changes. There's always drama going on. But I was in a continuous just state of not feeling good and just really just not depressed. And it didn't matter what was happening outside of my life. Everything could be great, and feeling more introverted than I usually was. It was just one of those things where I just didn't feel good. And to me, I think, you said, if everything else, you should be feeling great, but you're not. That's a sign that maybe there's something wrong, especially if it's happening for a long time, and especially if it's not related to any specific life event. Something great could happen, and you struggle to really kind of feel the emotion that when you're not feeling that way, you would.
Sherry in our RC chat room says, all too often when I try to talk to someone about my depression to others, they're dismissive and say stuff like, just get over it. It's not that simple at all. That's why when people actually kill themselves, everyone always says, oh, we never saw it coming. Of course you didn't, because you chose not to listen. You agree with that?
I agree with that, and I also think is not only people chose not to listen, but I think a lot of times, I know this is true for me, the person who's depressed chooses not to show it.
Yeah.
A lot of people when they hear that I suffer from depression, if they know me from social media, from podcasts, from my writing, they're surprised because like, oh, you're so energetic, you're so outgoing, you seem so full of life and so full of vigor. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, I am, and A, that's because I'm on medication, but B, it's because even when I am feeling bad, I spend so much of my life trying to cover that up. And the reason we do that, I think, is because so many people feel uncomfortable sharing that they're really feeling bad because they're worried about that exact reaction. Oh, well, you can just turn it off, just choose to feel better. And so when people are faced with, that kind of reaction, I think that it's easier to fake it. And you think maybe if I fake it long enough, maybe it'll make it better. And for a while, maybe it does, but then that goes away. And there's only so much you can kind of hold in and put out, a happy face on the outside, especially if you have other things going on with your life and if you have other commitments, and it can make it really difficult to go through day-to-day life putting on a facade of feeling okay. But that's sort of, I think, the insidiousness part of the disease is that it's so internalized. It's such a private thing that even when you're in the midst of it, people might not see how much you're suffering because of what you do yourself to try to cover that up from the outside world.
You say in your After Aaron Schwartz, the Tech World Must Talk About Depression article over at Mashable.com, to be depressed is to be a very good actor. Fake it long enough, you think, and maybe it'll become reality. That's absolutely the truth, isn't it? And that's the way I've always been able to cover it up, is that I'm a good actor, I'm a funny guy, I'm a gregarious guy, I can tell you stories, and like a magician, I make you look over here while the bad stuff is happening over here. And is that the way you cope with depression, or does depression make you do that? Is depression so smart that it can force you to hide the depression from others?
I'm not really sure. I think, I've talked to my shrink a lot about this, and I think my psychiatrist, I should say, and and he's actually written books, about the subject, and is well respected in his field. And I think that for most people it's a coping mechanism, because we don't want to feel that way, and you want to feel better, and there is something, I think, because part of what makes depression so hard, and I wrote about this in my article about Aaron Schwartz, is that there are a lot of medical problems you can have where, of course, you're not going to blame the person. And of course, it's not going to be within your control. Like, if someone is type 1 diabetic, you're not going to say, oh, well, make your pancreas create insulin. You're not going to expect to feel like you can just change that. But because it's mental health, we feel like it's something we should personally be able to overcome. We feel like it's a personal point of weakness. And I think most individuals, certainly not all, but many, don't want to show off what they perceive as a weakness or what they might be ashamed of in public, and so you hide it, you fake it.
Sure. We got a comment. MacMan makes a great comment in the IRC chat room. It's not always because people don't listen. I had a coworker who killed herself, and all the friends in the world were willing to listen and help, didn't prevent it. I'm sure that's a lot of the problem. I know that's the problem I've had personally over these years. I know lots of people who would be happy to sit down and listen to me. I don't want to talk to them about it. I can't bring myself to burden them with my problems, which is certainly a thought that a lot of folks have had. And then it feeds on itself. It becomes this monster inside of you that just keeps feeding on that idea of, oh, I don't want to burden you with this. I'll deal with it myself, kind of thing.
Yeah, no, that's very true. And people don't want to share that burden because it's a lot, and it can be a struggle to even, get the words out. And I think even some people who, when they do get help, if they're not, I think medicine, it can be a fantastic resource, for management especially, but it can be really hard to find the right, combination of medicine. It can be hard to find the right doctor.
Yep.
And so there are people who, even if they're in treatment, even though, you cognitively know when you're depressed that people care and that you might have someone to talk to. Not everyone does, but a lot of people who are in it know that.
Yep.
But that doesn't matter at the moment.
Exactly.
When you are depressed, that's irrelevant. And I think of, David Foster Wallace, probably one of the most talented writers, of our generation, if not, the last 100 years. And he was, he wrote a lot about his depression. And when he died, he had gone through a period of time where he was okay. He was on a medication regime that worked. It was good. He was able to go off of it, and then his depression resurfaced, and he went back on the drugs, and the drugs didn't work. And he was very, very depressed. He was under the care of a doctor. He was with his parents. When he committed suicide, it wasn't as if he didn't know that there were options out there or that people cared about him. It was that what happened in his life got to be so awful that he couldn't bear it anymore. And so, and I think, I don't know the personal circumstances around Robin Williams, but I mean, if he was in treatment, he was aware of things too. I think that's an indicator that it's not as if people don't know that you love them. Of course, people know that the people love them, but that's not enough to save anything. And I think that's a great comment, in the chat, that's not always enough. I think the thing that you can do, maybe not to prevent suicides, is to try to see when it's happening and try to get people treatment. And that might not be enough to stop it, but there are a lot of people who are untreated. I think there are more people who are untreated who take their own lives than people who are under treatment. It's not going to save everybody, but I think that it's one of those cases about, recognizing it, or at least if you're recognizing it in yourself and saying, okay, you know what, I need to go to talk to someone. I need to speak with someone.
I don't know if you even know the answer to this, but if you do, please let me know. Is there a type who are more susceptible to depression? I think of in my community, the black community, sickle cell anemia is very common in the black community, not in the white community. Are there particular, for lack of a better term, markers for depression? Some kind of people that are more likely to become depressed than others?
From what I understand, they're not really completely sure. There are certainly signs that they can tell. I know that they've been able to do studies, and these are just starting to come out, but I know that my doctor was telling me about a study recently they did on two brains of people at the same age when they died, one person who was depressed, one person who wasn't, and the size of the brain, or the person who when they looked at the person who had depressed, there was a significant portion of the brain that was dead, that had been killed off, that had had, they could actually tell like post-op, like what, I can't think of the term. They could tell, looking at the autopsy, that there was brain damage that had occurred, and that wasn't there with the non-depressed person. So there are definitely markers after the fact, and there are certainly there have been some signs that show that it's hereditary. I know that bipolar disorder, which is different than depression but can have some of the same signs, is hereditary, and I think depression can be too, but it's not, as far as I know, there's not any sort of ethnic or racial basis one way or another, but it does tend to run in families. And then that's one of the reasons why they ask questions when you go in is anyone in your family depressed? And sometimes people don't even know.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that. Exactly. I don't know. Yeah, that's right.
Well, and then that's, I think, one of the problems, right, is that we don't talk about it. And as a society, we feel like it's an embarrassment to talk about. No one wants to admit that they have it. And so family members might not even know, oh, my grandmother had this. This was going on. And those can be really important things to know, when a doctor's trying to treat you, if there's anyone in your family who has this, because if they're still trying to diagnose you, they don't know what's going on. If they have that information, they might be able to, better diagnose you more quickly. So
I think Brian Monroe in our RC chat room, unfortunately, has gotten something that I'll make light of, because that's the kind of guy I am. Normally, I've seen it be smart people who are depressed, as they can see the world the way it is versus the way others say it should be. Yeah, self-awareness is a bitch. The fact that you can see how freaking horrible the planet is. If I was stupid, I think it'd be easier to deal with life. But
totally.
Being self-aware and understanding what's going on in the world, certainly, honest to God, doesn't help, because that just drives you into more of a depression. When you can see all the shit that's going on in the world, you think, well, God damn it, why should I bother?
Right. No, it absolutely. I agree with that. I think, and there have been studies to show, that the mental illness and intelligence there's like a direct correlation, and how true that is, I don't really know, but there have actually been studies to show that. Hitler was insane, but he was actually very smart. There are all kinds of things like that. But yeah, I think that it can definitely make it worse. I think if you are self-aware and if you are an engaged person, and you think a lot. That's the thing that I find that runs through a lot of depressed people, is that we're thinkers. We think a lot.
We think too much.
Exactly, and that can make it worse, because then you kind of get it sucked into this, spiral of other things.
You mentioned earlier about signs. Let's talk about that. What are signs that people who are looking from the outside in can maybe spot and see in potentially depressed friends and family and colleagues? And the reverse, what are the signs that I can look for in myself that maybe could give me a hint as to, oh, you should take a look at this or get some help for this or at least read up more on it?
So I mean, one of the things I would say is, like sleep changes. If you're a person yourself, if you've normally had consistent sleep changes and you either are sleeping a lot or you're not sleeping a lot at all, and that changes and that goes on for a significant period of time, that's one of the signs. A loss of energy, feelings of helplessness and loneliness, not having interest in doing regular things, not wanting to go out with your friends. I think a great sign for outsiders going in is that if you have someone that you used to be pretty close with and you haven't heard from them in a while and they don't go out with you anymore, and maybe at first you think they're blowing you off, but they're, you want to check up on them, because a lot of times that, for me, I know when I can feel myself going into feeling like I'm more depressed and needing to look at something is when my social life drastically declines and I disengage with people. That's one of the first signs, is when I disengage. So I'm not going out with people. I'm not interacting online. I'm not, hanging out with people after work. I'm very much just kind of doing my own thing and not interacting. So if you see someone that you used to engage with and they've kind of dropped off, or they're not doing what they used to do, that's a really good sign. If you're noticing, that someone doesn't just, they seem, sad, but it doesn't seem to be maybe related to anything, like they haven't had a death in the family, thing is going okay with work, and they're just really down. Anytime anyone is talking about wanting to hurt themselves or wanting to kill themselves or feeling like life is worthless or useless, that's a sign. And a lot of times people say that because that's how it feels. And so if you hear someone saying that, don't immediately call 911. Don't immediately, you don't want to, immediately jump the gun, but maybe talk to the person and see like, hey, what's going on? If someone makes a direct threat on their life, obviously you want to, contact, health officials. But, if someone's talking about, in language like I feel so hopeless and I'm useless, I can't do anything right, it is overwhelmingly negative. That's a good indicator.
I had a friend I was talking about this interview with this afternoon on iMessage, and he said it was fascinating. He said, "Well, I'm not depressed. I'm often sad. I do have feelings of loneliness." And as he was describing things, I said to him, "Dude, you're depressed. You may not have depression, but you're depressed." And I said, "Well, here, take this test." Now, the online tests are not going to clinically diagnose you, but they might help, like Christina saw when she was 9 years old in the TV commercial. It might point you in the right direction. So I just literally did a Google search for depression quiz, grabbed the first one, cut and pasted the URL to him. He said, "Okay, hang on a second. Let me take this test." He takes the test and he goes, "Fuck, I'm depressed." I was like, "Yeah, dude." Yeah. You just the way you talk about it, I could tell that you have some form of depression, not clinical, but you are
right. No, you can tell.
You can tell,
right? And I mean, honestly, again, those tests aren't going to be medically conclusive or anything, but it does go a really long way to say, you know what, if I'm meeting these criteria, these very base criteria, then I need to go talk to someone. That's what that says to me. I think that's a completely fine starting point, because if it's enough to fit literally the textbook kind of definitions, it's the same with any other illness. Like if you were diabetic, the symptoms before it happens might be, you're thirsty a lot, you're always going to the bathroom, you're really tired. There's certain signs and things that happen. Depression's not any different. So if you're finding that you're meeting those criteria, and it's a really good idea to go talk to someone, whether whether it's your regular physician, whether it's a psychologist or psychiatrist or whatever, go talk to someone.
I think the biggest thing for me that I realize, and when I'm trying to figure this out, I'm nowhere near the level of Christina, when it comes to the self-awareness aspect of it. I'm still admitting it, let alone being diagnosed or getting treatment for it. But I'm looking at a website, DIY Coutier, 21 tips to help keep your shit together when you're depressed. Number 19, depression will lie to you. Depression will try to tell you what others are thinking. That's the biggest problem I have, is that I get into these, for lack of a better term, moods, and don't want to reach out to anyone else, because my brain tells me, oh, they don't really care. They have their own problems. They, you don't want to burden your friends with these kind of things. One of the things that you said is, look for the signs of someone saying that they're going to hurt themselves. Well, I'm self-aware enough and smart enough to know that even when I do want to hurt myself, I would never say it to anyone else, because then they'd call and get treatment for me. I don't want treatment. That's depression lying to me. That's depression telling me, no, go ahead and open that vein. Go ahead and jump off that bridge. And I've been in that place at least 3 times in my life where I'm a smart guy. I know I can pick up the phone and dial the hotline number. I can talk to friends. But depression lied to me and said, those friends don't care about you. The hotline people won't actually help you. Or guess what? You don't really want help. Go ahead and jump off this bridge.
You're dead on, and that I love the website, love what it's saying, because it's true. Yeah, it totally lies to you, and it makes you think things that aren't real, and it makes it hard to admit things, makes it hard to talk about, and um it's a really difficult illness, I think, to describe adequately if you've never been through it. But when you're going through it, to me, this is one of the hard parts about it too. When you're in it, at least when I'm in it, I can't remember what it was like not to be depressed.
Yeah.
And then when I'm not depressed, it's hard to remember how bad it can be. And that's a problem too, because you have these moments, at least I do, and unless I go into a very severe depression, where you have moments of clarity. So it's not always a universal thing. You might have moments of levity. You might have moments that are really good. And in fact, in my life, that's been very true. My lowest moments, first time I ever, when I was 16 years old, I missed 6.5 weeks of school because I couldn't get out of bed. I literally couldn't get out of bed. That was where I was. But it doesn't always go to that point, and it doesn't have to be at that point. There were other times in my life where I've certainly been depressed and have been able to cope on the outside. But you have these moments of levity, and when you're feeling those moments, you second guess yourself. I think you and I were talking about that earlier, where you're thinking, oh, I'm not really that bad.
Yeah.
Everything's really okay. I just need to buck up. I'm fine. Like your friends saying to you, oh, I'm not depressed. I get sad. Sure, I'm sad. Sure, I'm lonely, but I'm not depressed. We don't want to think of ourselves that way. And I think it's important to know that this is a real thing that's actually happening.
How are you coping? Is coping the right word? Or managing? How are you
managing
on a personal level? How are you actually, what do you do to manage this?
Well, I do a couple of things. So I'm on a pretty decent antidepressant regimen that I've been on for, I guess, I've been on this particular regimen for like 7 or 8 years.
Is that permanent?
Yes,
No.
yes. So when I was 21 or 22, my doctor told me that he said I would not recommend that you ever going off antidepressants.
No.
And that was hard to hear, but
Sure.
it was also important. So it's just one of those things that I deal with and I'm fine with. There was a period of time in college where I didn't have to be on antidepressants, and then I started feeling depression come back. I felt everything was going so good in my life. Everything was wonderful. And then I started having these nagging feelings in the back of my head where I just felt sad for no reason. I started feeling those pangs. I was so angry because I was like, I don't want this to come back.
Yeah.
And it came back, and even under treatment, it was severe enough. The doctor said, no, we don't want to do this. So I'm on a antidepressant, and I'm a couple of different things. And then I actually also do therapy. I don't do it as often as I wish I would, but because my doctor lives in Atlanta now, but I talk to my shrink once a month. So I try to talk with him and be honest and open with him about everything, which is hard. And I'm not always honest with him. And then that's the realistic truth. But, then I think about, I'm like, I'm paying this guy $240 an hour to be honest with him, what is he going to judge me? No, you know what I mean?
That's right.
And so having somebody to talk to in that way, and then monitoring what's happening with my medicines. The hard thing with medication, and certainly it's not the solution for everyone, but I think that it can be a really important thing for a lot of people's management, is that how it works with your body, how it works with every individual's body is different. And sometimes you might take Paxil or Prozac or something, and maybe that'll be all you need to do and you feel great. No. But for a lot of times what happens is that you might feel okay for a few weeks, and then it stops working, and maybe you need to try a different, dosage. Maybe you need to try a different combination. Maybe this drug has a really bad side effect. Maybe this one doesn't. And so you end up having to try a bunch of different things. And I did that while I was, 14, 15, 16. And I was on something like, I think I tried something like 31 different types of drugs before. At that time, I found a combination that worked. It was awful. I went through, it was a really difficult process. And I can understand why so many people try one or two and then they give up. And I understand that. But the only advice I would say is that if you are depressed, be willing to continue to try. Go to another doctor, try other combinations. If you want to try, non-medication things, you want to do homeopathic, you want to try, vitamins, you want to try diet things. For some people that can be very successful. Give it a shot, but be open to knowing that it's not going to be a very quick cure-all. And then for me, I try to monitor, what's happening in my life. And if I feel myself slipping, talk to my doctor. Maybe we look at adjusting something medication wise, or maybe we, look at maybe trying to add something else, or trying to figure out another solution. But for me, it just comes down to being very aware of how I'm feeling and knowing when to recognize when I'm feeling depressed again, so that I can then try to deal with it as soon as I can.
It sounds like one of the issues is that managing depression is depressing.
It is.
We see folks in IRC chat room talking about how they've had to go on and off different kinds of meds and the side effects.
It's awful.
It's awful. Yeah, the whole process itself to get this under control is
yes,
depressing.
And that's before before you even deal with the whole insurance debacle with all of it.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, finally in the United States, it's now they can no longer deny you insurance because of mental health reasons.
Yeah.
But and I wrote about this in my Mashable article. So the first year and a half, I guess, I was at Mashable. Mashable was still a really small company, and so we didn't have health insurance.
No.
So I paid for COBRA. I paid for an extension of my parents' insurance. I was past the age limit. For whatever reason, they let me continue to pay for insurance. But I was paying, close to $1,000 a month for my insurance and my medication.
Mm-hmm.
But the alternative would have been that I wouldn't have had. Some of the medications would have cost more than that without, so I needed the insurance. And, the alternative would have been I wouldn't have had medicine. Yeah. And that was not a viable alternative for me. But I couldn't get insured. It was one of those things. It wasn't just my company didn't have it at the time. It was that because I was diagnosed at a young age, it was a pre-existing condition, and insurance companies wouldn't insure me. That's fortunately no longer the case. Insurance companies have to take you, but finding what doctors will see you, getting them to be willing to write you prescriptions, even finding the right doctor, and that depends on what country you're in, getting in to see someone can be a really difficult process. Mm-hmm. Like you said, yeah, it can be depressing, and it's a slog, and it's not easy. And that's the suckiest thing about it, is that it's not only do you have to deal with this disease and feeling awful, but you've got to deal with this other stuff.
Yeah.
I was fortunate in some ways that I was so young when I started on treatment stuff, because I had my mom who was able to make the doctor's appointments and deal with the insurance stuff, and wasn't willing to let me not take my medicine.
Yeah.
But now that I'm an adult, it's one of those things, I see it with my husband as well. He also suffers from depression and anxiety, like he will never not have, his medicine. You know what I'm saying? Like, I will never not let him have that. Yeah. So I think having somebody in your life, if at all possible, to kind of keep you grounded in that way, or help you out, just to be a shoulder to lean on and rely on, to not let you not go to the doctor appointment or not get something filled because you need to get it filled, or not try another thing, even though it's really hard to continue to try medications and find the right balance. Having someone who's willing to say, no, you need to do this because this is really important, is awesome. And I not everybody can have that, but I think if you can find one person in your life who can help with that, that can be really beneficial.
For those folks who may not have that, are there online resources that folks can turn to, online support groups, forums, websites that you can suggest?
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely support groups. I'm not really sure of any of the online support groups, although there's certainly, I know that there are groups available that talk and that are active. They're also, if you contact, your local community mental health services, there's usually support groups for people to talk about. Yeah. And that can be really, really useful. I think oftentimes even just calling, like if you have, assuming you have insurance, even calling the Medline on your insurance and asking to speak to someone, they can recommend people. But, I think that the more we talk about it publicly, the more people can find others that they probably already know who suffer from depression, and that can help. I mean, that's one of the things. I mean, I'm not a doctor. I happen to know a whole lot about this, but I'm not a doctor, because I've lived. It's been a big part of my life, and my mom is a psychologist, so that helps a little bit too. But because I've gone through this, I'm always willing to listen or talk to anybody else who I can help if I can in any way, or offer feedback. And I know that there are other people out there too who I've run into that, where I've said things like, oh, I had an anxiety attack a few weeks ago, and I shared about it on Twitter, and the amount of people who reached out to me and said, if you need anyone to talk to, I go through this too, was fantastic and was really reassuring. And I think just trust that you can share with people. If someone says you can talk to me and I want to be there for you, it's okay to trust and talk with them, because we all need somebody. You can't do this by yourself.
I think it's a good spot to stop right there. Is that, yeah, you can't do this by yourself. I've come to that realization thanks to Christina, for making that clear to me. It's gotten worse for me over the last 6 months that I found it harder and harder and harder for me to fake it. As Christina said in her article about Aaron Swartz, that we who manage this, cope with this, suffer from this, have by the very nature become very good actors. And I've been a very good actor in faking this for a very, very long time. But it's gotten, for any number of reasons, any number of triggers, gotten a lot worse for me in the past 6 months. So I'm taking to heart what Christina is talking about here, and I hope the folks who are listening out there do too. I see Sherry is talking about her managing her depression. I think, Christina, is part of the problem that we call this a mental illness as opposed to just saying depression. I think one of the problems that we have is the terms we use. The word
Yes.
mental illness has such a loaded connotation
Oh, yeah.
to it that I don't want to call it a mental illness.
Right.
Depression is fine, but mental illness makes me think like I'm crazy. I'm not crazy. I'm just depressed.
Exactly. No, you're dead on. I mean, I try to say mental health rather than mental illness, but if we look at how it's classified, that's how it's classified.
Sure.
But you're dead on. I mean, it's a loaded term and it has connotations. People hear mental illness, they think schizophrenia, and it's not the same thing. And that's not to disparage or at all anyone who has schizophrenia and is dealing with that at all. But there's a difference, and that sort of people having that bias. And the bias is systemic, and I think that's part of this. That as you said, the terminology is loaded. The labeling, people don't want to be labeled that way. I wrote last year in my post about that the stigma of depression, it breeds fear, and fear keeps those suffering quiet. And, the stigma doesn't go away until a population hears personal stories from the afflicted.
Yep.
And history bears this out time and time again within each stigmatized group. It doesn't go away until you know someone and can connect it with someone that you see. And so more stories means creating a culture where, future people who kill themselves from depression or suffer, can speak out about their suffering before that happens. And so, that was one of the things that, I think is really important is to talk about it. But you're right, the label does definitely hurt because it does kind of create this bias that's systemic, and that bias keeps people from talking about it. And that's the circular problem. People don't want to talk about it because they don't want to be labeled a certain way, because they don't want to be seen. What is this going to do to my personal life? What is this going to do to my career? Are people going to look down on me and think less of me if I say this? So I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to keep it quiet. But by keeping it quiet, you're suffering, and you might not be getting the help that you need. And if everyone keeps it quiet, then no one will get any help. And so I think the only way to go forward is to do what you've done, which I think is so fantastic, coming forward and talking about it honestly. I mean, that's an amazing thing to do, and admitting it, out loud. I think that's the first step in helping to get rid of that stigma, so that regardless of the label, if somebody wants to call me crazy, okay, I know I'm not. But I also realize that not everybody has gotten to that point, but I think we can make that better just by openly talking about it as a community and sharing our stories, so that it gets harder and harder for the stigma reactions and for people who make, assumptions about what depression is can go away.
Are there triggers that people should avoid? Do you notice that there are certain situations or events in your life that you have to stay away from in order to not go down that awful rabbit hole?
For me personally, no, but I can't speak for everyone. For me personally, it's certainly sad things can happen, and I can be sad about that. But for me, it's not situational at all. It tends to just be kind of a chronic thing. But if you do start to notice, maybe if you're being around people or around situations that are making you feel a certain way, I think that's a good thing to note that and to do what you can to get out of it. I would say this, though. If you're in a negative environment, if you're at a job that's not good for you, if you're in a relationship or, something else is going on in your life that is negative, that will only make things worse.
Sure, yeah.
So what I would say is that, recognize those things. And if you're, getting into a better situation, getting out of that situation won't solve the depression if you are suffer from clinical depression, but it will certainly not make it any worse. If you're in a negative environment, that's going to make what whatever else might be happening, with your, biochemistry, that much less optimal.
Yeah. We got an email from our friend Stephen Sand of TUAW. He said, dang, wish I could have joined you guys. I'm another one of the many folks out there being treated for depression. Can't wait to listen to the podcast, Shawn and Christina. Conversation.
I love you, Steve.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Conversation, talking about it. Again, the more of us who are managing this, suffering from it, again, whatever words you want to use, the more of us who are nominally in a public eye or have other people to talk about, that we can say these things out loud and without fear of embarrassment, without fear of recrimination. The first person who says something negative to me about this stuff, well, I'll punch right in the nose. Not a problem. I'm big enough to pull it off. We as folks in the IRC chat room were saying, we have to get rid of the stigma of this. This is no worse, no better than having diabetes.
It's not.
This is a body health issue. My body, for whatever reason, doesn't make insulin properly. My body, for whatever reason, has a chemical imbalance of whatever it is. And it's bad. There's no doubt about it. I mean, I came close. When I went to Halifax last June, I was going to die. One of the things, and I'm not afraid to admit this, but one of my intentions of going back home, because home is, my hometown is, fuck. But I had planned on killing myself. And for whatever reason, I didn't. And it's hard to pull yourself out of this mess, but the more of us who talk about it, the more of us who admit it, and admitting not in a negative kind of way, but saying, hey,
yes,
yeah, me too. Let's all talk about this. Let's help each other. Let's support each other. Let's find resources. Let's do whatever we need to do to help folks like us not feel this way is a good thing. It can't be anything but a good thing to deal with this out in the open and stop stigmatizing people. Stop thinking you're crazy because you feel this way. You're not crazy for feeling this way.
No, you're not. You're not crazy. You're not broken, and it's not your fault.
Folks, I've been talking to Christina Warren. She is the senior tech analyst over at Mashable. Mashable.com is the website. Christina, once again, I thank you very much for your courage and your bravery, and thank you very much for helping me get through this.
And Shawn, thank you. And thank you for your bravery and your courage and for keeping on. And I'm so glad that you're still with us. And thank you for sharing, because that's so important. And that's, I was, when I read yesterday, when you sent a tweet that said that, you admitted it because out loud, because of what I'd said, I was at an event and I teared up, but it was one of those things that really moved me, because that's what we all need to do. And so I'm so thankful that you've done that. And thank you for speaking out and using your platform to do that.
Thanks, Christina. Talk to you soon.
All right. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Oh, okay. Well, that didn't go the way I wanted it to go. One of the reasons why I was asking Christina about triggers was because I have triggers. I know there are certain things that happen in my life that just drive me into this pit. And one of the problems is I can't avoid the trigger. For me, one of the triggers is money. I've been poor my entire life. Since I was a kid. When we were kids, there was 4 or 5 of us, we would make a decision in the mornings of whether we wanted to have breakfast or dinner. If we said breakfast, one of us would walk down to the store and buy a quart of milk, and that was it. That's what you ate till the next day. And the next day you would decide whether you wanted breakfast or dinner. If you said dinner, you didn't get breakfast. You went to school hungry. And as I get older and bigger, I get to beat up little kids for their lunch. And so that depressed me. I mean, as a kid, I was depressed because of that. And it's been a symptom my entire life. No matter what I try to do, that's my trigger. If I can't pay my rent, that's depressing. And that happens on a regular basis for me. What has helped me a lot, and I know she's listening right now, is my friend Leslie. My friend Leslie, who has helped me out so much with the Starting Point photography stuff. That we've got 8 classes coming up this October, November, and this is not a pimping of those classes, but because she's helped me organize those classes and get those together, maybe I can pull myself out of this financial mess I'm in, and therefore out of this depression I'm in. So if you know of somebody, talk to them, listen to them. If you are somebody who feels this way, talk to somebody. There are millions of somebodies out there who will listen to you. There you have family. And if you don't have family, you have friends. And if you don't have friends, you have strangers. There's lots of folks out there who are willing to listen, who are willing to help. And as someone said in the IRC chat room, it's a cliche, but the first step is admitting, not that you have a problem, but admitting that there's an issue in your life that you need to find a solution to. You need to work towards whatever that solution might be. The solution could be something as simple as talking to family and friends. The solution could be as simple as talking to a doctor and working on a medication regime. Maybe a therapist. I mean, I don't know. I've been doing this, managing this for 40 years, and I don't know what to do next, but I'm going to go find out. Again, thanks very much to Christina Warren. Thanks for everyone for listening. I've been Shawn King, and you've been listening to Your Mac Life. See ya.